The key to successful trading really stems down to having as little to think about as possible before you enter and even engage in the battlefield of reading those charts. It is all psychology. Everything stems down to decisions that we allow the brain to decide. If your mind is not at the utmost of clarity, we will not think clearly enough to stick to a simple rule. Start to become more conscious of how you feel and what you're thinking and what mental state you're in before engaging in any form of trading activity. There is an invisible enemy in trading that is contributing to your downfall, a ghost and a silent assassin, so to speak, that's killing your results and killing your progress. Now, when it comes to unsatisfactory results within the market, we often look at, our poor analysis or risk management and anything else of that nature, which is true in many ways. We blame those things because those things are likely the downfall, but it isn't truly those things. And actually, the root source cause is you, your brain. That's really where the problems stem. Now, for many, many years in trading, when I first started, a lot of my issues came down to the fact, which took a big realization to come to the conclusion of what was the cause. It was me and my brain. More so, the lack of control over my brain and lack of understanding of how much external stuff is impacting me when it comes to my trading. Now, when we blame something like risk management, poor risk management, or when we blame poor analysis, at the core of it all, what is the final determining factor that leads us to make those decisions in the first place? It's the brain. Inevitably, it's you. Your brain is the one that leads you to push the buy and sell button. Your brain is the one that leads you to perceive what you see on the charts is what you actually see. And in many circumstances, a lack of control over the brain and over oneself is the sole contributing factor to every single downfall you see. Because if you think about it, when you're looking at the charts, your eyes are seeing what it potentially sees, but your brain is processing that information and taking a conclusive decision from that. So your eyes may be seeing one thing, but your brain is almost telling it what to see. If not, on the opposing side, your brain is miscalculating and misreading what your eyes are actually seeing. And both need to be controlled, but most importantly, the brain needs to be controlled in this predicament. If you consider your brain like a computer's RAM, that's the best way to view this. Your brain is the RAM that basically controls the entire computer system, which is you. If your RAM is overloaded, and a good example of this is, let's say your computer has one intensive application or software open. If you go and check, your activity monitor, it will show you that 98% of CPU is being used by this one program or software. And if you go and attempt to use another program or do anything else on your computer when the majority of that CPU is being consumed by one program, it won't load, it won't process properly, and most likely, third and finally, your computer will crash. That's happening to us on a continuous daily basis, and we are then taking a brain or a CPU or RAM that's being heavily used in terms of percentage. The majority of it is being consumed by something else. You then try to open your trading software or engage in another software program or activity, aka trading, with a RAM that is predominantly consumed by something else, and you're going to see detrimental results. It's going to crash, it's going to be glitchy, and there's going to be, in real world terms, losses. And it's time to fix that and understand why that may be. Now, we really do not realize how much external factors impact us, whether it's what we read, what we consume, but also down to our health, our fitness, our sleep routine, our sleep cycle. All of these little niche factors are pieces to a puzzle when put together contribute to how much RAM and CPU is being used on a daily basis. So in the instance of your brain being the CPU, your goal is to ensure your brain is using as little CPU as possible, besides for the sole purpose of analyzing those charts right there, reading those charts, and of course, processing and filtering the data those charts are showing you. This process is quietly taking place long before you actually make it to the charts, and there's numerous things people do before actually going onto their charts. There are some people that wake up in the morning and the first thing they do is go on their phone, myself included, by the way, being completely honest. And what do you then do? You're bombarded with a ton of notifications, whether it's messages from your friends, it's the news app telling you a bunch of negative and very scary things. It's trading notifications. Suddenly you've got this coin's up 94%, Euro USD's down to record lows. Something is always going on and you are suddenly being bombarded. Your CPU has suddenly increased massively in how much data it's processing from the very first few seconds and minutes you wake up. You have already started to activate all of the software that is collectively polluting your CPU. Immediately, you've given yourself an unfair advantage. If you then take that a step further and look at what most people are doing, you're going on social media, you're scrolling from the offset, your CPU is full before you can even get out of bed most of the time. Now, how can you expect to go ahead and engage in other activities or process additional software accordingly when your RAM is being overloaded from the very moment you wake up in the morning? And then there is the other demographic of people who get up, do not use their electronic devices, or keep it to a minimal and go about their day processing additional things without the need of social media or using their phone. Well, the likelihood is you're still being distracted from work. You're getting ready. You have to think about getting the car to work or train to work. You have to think about getting ready for work, eating breakfast, what your day is going to engage, likely dreading what you're going to do for the day. Even if we are not throwing ourselves into activities that consume the RAM, we are mentally polluting the RAM by overthinking throughout the day. The key to successful trading really stems down to having as little to think about as possible and the utmost mental clarity before you enter and even engage in the battlefield of reading those charts. Because execution is one part, but ensuring you have the correct mindset and the correct analysis is the first part of the formula. And it's a several stage process of analysis to execution to trade management to even entering and exiting in general. The whole and entirety of that trading process requires as much available CPU as possible to go through the process as efficiently as possible. And throughout that stage, you may be in complete control over the analysis part, but then by the time you've gone through to the execution process, your CPU may be a lot more clouded and polluted than it was during the analysis phase. So you actually need to ensure you are in optimal form from the offset. And little things like your diet, your sleep, what you consume visually and mentally will all play a very significant role in this horrendous concoction. So, when you think about the idea that we touched upon in the very beginning of having poor risk management or misreading the charts, that's generally a consequence of mental pollution. Mental pollution that we have most likely brought upon ourselves because we are the ones in control of truly accepting what the brain is telling us, whether that means overthinking or overconsuming. If you have gone on an absolute battleground fiesta of scrolling through IG, TikTok, YouTube shorts, and everything before trading, you're subconsciously just polluting your mind before engaging in battle, in theory, in the battleground of the markets. That's not how you go about doing this. And every little element of your life, if you have several other things to manage, you may have meetings, you may have a meeting with your manager, or you go into your families, you have to make a long journey. Every single thing you do throughout the day is going to subconsciously impact you. Now, the likes of risk management, what actually leads us to break our risk management rules? It's us. We are the ones that sit there and make a decision knowing it's wrong to do the opposite of what we should be doing. We're the ones that execute a trade without a stop loss. We're the ones that enter a trade and move a stop loss when we know we shouldn't. We're the ones that over leverage and over risk. It is all us. And whilst you can blame external factors, we are the ones that make the final concrete decision to make that decision. And it all comes down to mental pollution. Because if your mind is not at the utmost of clarity in the moment of making those very important and costly decisions, both for a loss perspective and a win perspective, we will not think clearly enough to stick to a simple rule. So when you think about a strategy, a formula, a trading plan, risk management, it's only going to work if we choose to stick to it. It's really no different to a diet. We know we shouldn't be having a McDonald's every single day, but in many circumstances, we convince ourselves to do it regardless. And only once we've done it do we feel bad for doing so. How many times have you done that? And I've done this a lot, especially since I started my fitness journey. I would go the whole week, pinpoint, crystal clear, would not deviate from my plan, count those calories, get my training in. But then when the weekend comes around, for some reason, I would just tell myself it's okay to have a cheat meal. And that becomes a Saturday cheat meal. And then Sunday becomes a cheat meal. And then by Monday, I feel like absolute shit and can't be bothered to train on Monday. And it spirals from there. The key is discipline, and the key is understanding that mental clarity must be maintained at all times, because the moment we make the first decision to break our plan and break our system and formula, which we make ourselves, and no one can be blamed for that, we spiral from that point onwards. This is also what makes trading so hard, because mentally it's fucking exhausting. I always say this, it's the hardest but easiest job in the world, because in terms of physical labor, you're pressing a few buttons. But in terms of mental exhaustion, it is an ongoing battle to stay on point. No different to trying to maintain a certain body fat percentage. It's really similar in that respect because it all requires the same level of discipline, something that we ourselves continuously break. And it comes down to having willpower, discipline, and a very strong will mind. And the reason why psychology plays such an important role in our education for members in the app, our YouTube videos, and just in general on social media is because it is all psychology. Everything stems down to decisions that we allow the brain to decide and execute based on those decisions and ideas and impulses, most importantly. A brain that is not in full control, or as an example, a CPU that is overloaded with either one software, which could even be, in this instance, depression, stress, any form of emotion you see, that one singular emotion alone can be so powerful. It's the equivalent of one program on your computer consuming all the CPU. Simultaneously, trying to juggle many different tasks and many different stressful tasks or general stresses throughout the day would be the equivalent of many programs or many tabs open at once, essentially overloading your CPU. Now, to take this a step further, on the basis of a CPU, have you, and I'm sure you've all done this, where your computer is so overloaded, whether it's playing a game or rendering a project, where it cannot handle the task of doing anything else. And until that program is closed, the computer remains entirely constricted on the task at hand. Now, comparing that to trading terms, this is an experience that I have had many times that I'm going to assume many of you have also had. And it's a very liberating feeling when all is said and done. And it's only once all is said and done in this particular scenario that your mental clarity returns. Now, I'm going to put you into the shoes of something that I've done many times before and hopefully will never have to do again. Now, put yourself in this predicament where you have executed a trade that you know you've gone into heavy on, whether you're flipping an account or it's a one-off. You've gone in very heavy on a trade with a conviction that you're going to win this trade, of course. Now, when you first entered this trade, you've already kind of fucked up, in all honesty, because you've over leveraged. You've gone in, let's say, with 50 lots instead of 5 lots because you're trying to do something very stupid, but for some reason you've convinced yourself it's a good idea. Now, you either haven't set a stop loss or you have set a stop loss. Now, of course, in the moment of execution, there's a risk to reward and an idea and a slight possibility it could work. But in this instance, it hasn't worked. And this trade starts to go against you. Now, because you've over leveraged, you are losing a large chunk of your account balance very, very quickly. And very soon it gets to the point where you've either moved the stop loss further or you still haven't placed a stop loss. And eventually over time, the price continues to go against you. And you are now at a point where you've suddenly realized that if this does not turn around very quickly, your money is gone. And you do not truly realize the value of that money until one fatal decision has completely fucked you up. And you now realize that that money is very likely gone and will be very hard to retrieve unless the market reverses right now back to break even. And as that moment begins to happen, you may notice that it is very hard to do anything else. You almost enter a vortex. You are in a bubble. It's almost like it's a level of anxiety and stress I can't really explain. It's very stressful. When people are talking to you, you can't truly hear them. Your phone is with you everywhere. And if you're on the computer, you can't hear anyone talking to you. And when you're moving, you're on your phone glued to it because you're constantly watching that trade lose. And it's very hard to do anything else in that moment. And that for me is the closest example I can find in real trading terms to having an overloaded CPU, because you can't truly process what people are telling you. You can't truly respond. You don't really know what to do, and you cannot physically do anything because this losing trade is there in front of you. You're watching those numbers get close to a liquidation level or blowing your account in Forex terms, whatever it may be. You have probably experienced that moment where your heart is almost racing. And only in that moment, you say to yourself, why did I do that? I wish I could go back. Why did I do that? And you get to a point where even if you're not religious, you are praying to whatever God is out there that the market will give you one more shot. And you then say those famous words, please, God, whoever it may be, bring this back to break even and I will never do this again. And you are stuck in that whirlwind and vortex and you are being yo-yoed around in that emotional turmoil until that trade either loses, you blow your account, or by some miracle, you make it back to break even or a profit. And until one of those deciding moments happens, which frees up your RAM, you are trapped in that emotional vortex for seemingly eternity. If you leave that trade to run overnight, it's very hard to sleep. It's very hard to do anything. Now, that's not how trading should be, but I'm hoping that's a relatable matter because I've been there and it's not fun in any way, shape, or form, to be honest with you. Now, if you've been through that and you've endured that, and unfortunately, I've been through that many times because I'm stupid, but I'm sure we've all made those mistakes and I'll never be one to shy away from that. But every time that happens, I always do the same thing. I will never do that again. Unfortunately, I haven't done that for a very, very long time because I got to the point where I realized that is the worst form of state to physically be in. And that is no way to trade. You end up in a situation where you're on the 1 second time frame and you're drawing trend lines, Fibonacci's, you're doing all sorts of stuff to try and quantify some form of miracle that the market will reverse. And that is you desperately trying to free up CPU so you can look at the market with clarity. But the decisions you make can take up that CPU, destroy your RAM, and stop you from doing anything else. A conversation with someone else at that moment is like trying to open up another program. It's not physically possible because your profit is gone. Your balance is gone. Your money's gone. That is the sole priority. And all of your mental capacity is being taken up by that. These are all silent killers that we basically kill ourselves with, in simple terms. We make the decision, we then suffer the consequences, desperately try to find some form of answer, when in reality, the answer is we shouldn't have done it in the first place. And what's funny is, most of the time for me, there's been a few instances where it's returned back to break even or a profit, and I get out and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll never do this again. And then I've ended up doing it again. But weirdly, in those moments, it's so stressful that whilst blowing your account is a devastating moment, it's like someone dying in front of you. It's almost somewhat relieving and liberating when you've exited that hole. And you almost get to a point where even the account blowing is better than suffering another day of knowing if it's going to get blown or not. And I've been in those instances where I've been holding a position for so long and it's bleeding and it gets almost back and then it goes down again, but I don't want to close. And then it finally blows and I kind of just go, do you know what? Thank God that's over. Thank God that's over. I don't want to have to do that again. But these are all crucial things we need to understand that play a key role in how successful our trading will be. You cannot physically expect to succeed in trading if you are engaged in that form of mental stress on a continuous basis. Now, this also stems down not even into those predicaments we put ourselves in, but also from very simple things such as our charts. What is on our charts? How much is on our charts? All of those additional lines we draw, all of those indicators, all of those tools, all of those metrics and data we read are slowly but surely increasing the CPU. When you run the charts or look at the charts with the raw price action, we are using the least amount of CPU possible. But every trend line we draw, every tool we add on top, every layer and indicator is slowly but surely increasing the CPU that we are consuming to try and read and engage and run the task efficiently. We do it to ourselves. Because whilst we believe it's more intelligent, we are actually causing more mental fatigue and exhaustion in the process. And even if you're not in the situation where you're in that very stressful phase where you're about to blow your account, simple things like layering your charts too much or trying to process too much data from social media, all of the mental fatigues and consequences this stuff causes is what causes impulse decisions. When you think about what causes you to break your risk management plans or break your trading strategy, the more that CPU is being consumed, the less CPU is available to efficiently process tasks, which is why we then end up doing the stupid stuff because there is only a small amount of rational thinking and clarity left in trading terms. So that small window of CPU is not able to process data accordingly or run the program efficiently. So it just executes at a whim. That's the easiest way to cross-reference the two as an easily understandable metric. If you're polluted and you're mentally polluted, the small amount of RAM that's left or CPU is going to just auto execute whatever it physically can because it attempts to run the task regardless. Let's say you've got 99% CPU used and you try to open another program on your computer, it will still attempt to run the task. It will probably pop up with a window. It may even slightly blink and open the program and then crash down. That's the equivalent to impulse decisions within the market. You are so limited in capability and facilities to run the task that you just do it on a whim instead. You're able to execute the task, but very quickly the task crashes on its own because of the decisions you've made. And a lot of this actually stems down to sleep. If you have poor sleep, and I've noticed this a lot, when I haven't had sufficient sleep, I wake up foggy. I barely know what I'm doing. I lose composure. I don't know where I'm going. I almost forget what I'm doing for the day. Having a concrete plan and routine structure to your day will also help significantly in just processing tasks throughout the day. If you were to wake up in the morning with a list ready to go of all the tasks you need to do for the day in a timely manner, you're going to get through those tasks efficiently and probably have time left over. Whereas when you wake up in the morning with no idea of what you're going to do first, just knowing you have loads of things to do, you get mentally overwhelmed very quickly. Next thing you know, you're stressed, you have anxiety, and it takes you 3 hours just to do one task or even mentally prepared to do one task. Little things like that carry over into your trading because if you're mentally stressed from life outside, it's going to carry over into the markets. And poor sleep is one of the largest contributing factors of this because if you've woken up groggy and you know you haven't had much sleep, you know regular stuff is difficult. You're doing things and you don't really realize you're doing them. You may be zoning out. You're probably doing that on the charts too. You need to have good sleep. It's very important. And key things like meditation before you go onto the charts, which is something is more easily said than done. But even 10 minutes of pure stillness and silence, or even just listening to some frequencies, meditation, or music of your choice will help you reach that flow state. A flow state is very important when it comes to trading, and it's very easily obtained if you simply just switch off from all external distractions beforehand. All of this stuff, as always, that I say, teach, and do is incredibly simplistic, but that's what makes it so complex. It's so easy, we almost think it won't work, but I guarantee you, it all does. Another example could also be having too many charts open. So for most people, having an overloaded chart is one process of overloading your CPU, but having to switch through so many tabs, so many different charts, so many different feeds of data is an equal amount of overloading processes that will pollute your CPU. It's fine. You see in the movies, oh, they've got 12 screens, they're standing up. No, you just need one screen and one chart. And this is why I often say just trading one crypto pair or one coin is more than enough. In fact, even in Forex or stocks, if you learn to master just one pair, you're probably going to receive and achieve much greater results than trying to dominate every sector, every field, every niche, every crypto stock or Forex pair or fiat currencies. It all applies in the same manner. The more you can simplify the process, the greater your results will be. So, when you look at some of the greatest traders in the world, or some of the most successful traders in the world, yes, they have all of the boxes checked. Risk management is probably the number one priority because a single mistake in trading can be fatal. But that isn't the full picture. They may be fantastic at risk management, they may be concrete strict on their strategy, their plan, their formula. But all of that is a byproduct of being excellent mental managers. They are at utmost and top priority mental managers of themselves. They ensure their CPU and RAM is never overloaded and never processing too many tasks at once. The utmost priority when trading is trading and analysis. Therefore, there must not be any other additional software, or as least software and programs as possible, open at the same time to pollute your CPU. The first step is to be completely conscious. Before you analyze the charts, before you even dare execute a position, start to become more conscious of how you feel and what you're thinking and what mental state you're in before engaging in any form of trading activity. Once you start to do that and you understand that how you enter the battlefield will heavily dictate how you exit the battlefield, you will see life changing results.